So are you someone who wants to know your options when it comes to birth control? Be empowered, ask your doctor questions, and visit nohormonesplease.com to learn more.
And we cut.
Sophia, that's looking great.
Awesome. Can I see playback? Oh, yeah, this looks good. Can we start a little wider and do a slow push-in?
Yeah.
That way we're welcoming people into a more intimate conversation. Because women's health shouldn't be hard to talk about, but obviously choosing a birth control is a personal decision, you know? We should be sharing information so we can all make informed decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that looks perfect.
Great, you wanna go again?
Yeah, can I just grab a snack?
Of course.
I'm just so glad we're letting women know that they have options when it comes to their bodies and their birth control. I mean, before this shoot, did any of you know that more than half of women surveyed had some concerns about hormones in their birth control, but they used them anyway because they weren't aware they had other options? Hello? Whether you want hormonal or hormone-free birth control, you should be empowered to ask questions or visit nohormonesplease.com to learn about it. I mean, look at all the options we have when it comes to our food and our beverages. It's nuts to me that we know so much about what's in our pastries, but we don't always know or feel like we're empowered to ask our doctors about our options when it comes to our birth control, right?
You gonna eat that?
You can have it.
Thanks.
You guys get it, obviously. This looks great. Should we go again?
Actually, that was kind of perfect. Wanna talk about the sweepstakes?
Yeah.
Great.
So if you want to enter to win a chance to come hang out with me or win a $1,000 gift card, visit nohormonesplease.com and make sure you ask your doctor about your birth control options.
How are you? Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
Who's
having
excited
me.
to see Sophia? I'm glad to see some men here learning about birth control today. So let's talk about how you got involved. We all know that you're very passionate. You're a passionate activist as well as an actress. But what drew you into this cause, No Hormones, Please?
Well, yes, I think it's no secret that I'm pretty passionate about all things having to do with women's rights and empowerment and with politics, especially given what's happening in our super fun current political landscape.
That's great.
And as we've watched women's rights sort of come under siege and this insane conversation about how maybe healthcare shouldn't cover birth control, I'm like, where do you all think you came from? Yeah. Just curious, all you men making the laws, how do you think you came into the world? I started really having more and more conversations about what family planning looks like in my groups of friends with women who are my age, who are older than me, who are younger than me, and listening to some of their concerns, which then immediately made me go on like a research binge, because I love nothing more than good data, and I like give me a graph all day. And I found out about this study that Teva did, and they found out that 1 in 2 women surveyed had reservations about hormones in her birth control, what hormones meant for her body, and didn't know that there's a non-hormonal option. And I thought, okay, we're blowing it. Yeah. The fact that educated, empowered, successful women don't know what their options are. What does that mean for young women? What does that mean for girls in college, for girls in high school? Why aren't we having these conversations, and why have our bodies become so weaponized? Why are our bodies treated like taboos? Why is like birth control like a whispered thing? And why is it like paper bag, bottom shelf, back corner, like heaven forbid you say period in public? Also, like 51% of the population are women. Yep. There's somebody bleeding somewhere every day. Let's get over it. And I just thought, okay, I'm not shy about talking about fighting for women, representing women, wanting women to have whatever access to anything they need. And this is beyond a sort of political conversation. This isn't if you're a Democrat or a Republican. This is simply if you are alive, you should have access to facts about your body and your care, and you should not be shamed about any of it. And I was like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this everywhere. Let's stop whispering. Let's start shouting. So we wanted to put together a resource to make this funny and like donuts. We wanted it to be easily digestible. And the point isn't to say any kind of birth control is better than the other. Some people really need hormonal birth control. They treat period pain or endometriosis with hormonal supplementation. Some people don't react well to hormones and need a non-hormonal option. And none of us needs to not be covered, because clearly it's up to us to cover ourselves. Again, current landscape. And I just thought, let's do something fun and make this easy, because this should be easy for us to talk about. If we're hiding these conversations, if we're shaming our bodies, if we're embarrassed to talk about it, then it's gonna get legislated that way as well. So, stand up, show up, speak up, defend your fellow women.
Yes, kudos.
That's it.
We need like a clap. I need like sirens going off right now. And it's funny when you mentioned like the period talk thing, because I'm looking at Dwayne Reed right outside, and I'm still afraid sometimes to go and buy tampons, because I'm like, oh my God, who's gonna look at me? But 50%.
Try being on a TV show and having to go buy tampons. It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's like a
Can't you
special
send
thing
somebody
when
to do
somebody's
that?
like, hey, your show's awesome, let me just ring you up. And I'm like, this is great. And then I go, why is this weird?
Yeah.
What about this is weird? Why does everybody get so weird about bodies? Again, where do we think we all came from? A body. Let's move on. It's 2017. Let's move on.
Thank you for the clap. When did you know, well, I mean, as women, we're always impassioned when it comes to women's rights, but when did you really know that you wanted to be an advocate and really get out there and use your platform?
Well, I was always an advocate. I just was a student, and then I was a college student, and I was always the one impassioned about something and hollering about something. And when I got into my line of work, I didn't love sort of the way the attention lens felt. I am an introverted extrovert. I love to meet people and I love to travel, but I don't actually do well with a ton of attention. I don't like the way it feels, and it was weird for me. And when social media launched, I was like, on what planet do I want to expose any more of myself than is already being exposed in ways that feel really scary? And then I realized that was a disservice, because no, I don't want to show up somewhere and like talk about myself and be like, hey, guess what I had for breakfast? Unless it's Miga's Tacos, and then I will post a picture on Instagram. But I realized that the thing that makes me comfortable in a room when a bunch of people are staring at me is talking about something I care about, is making sure that that room full of people is supporting each other, creating community, empowering each other, that we're changing our landscapes of how we participate as citizens, how we vote, how we defend our neighbors. We have to show up, and you show up and you change minds and you open hearts and you share a dialogue. You learn things from people who have different opinions than you when you speak, and then you listen when they speak. And that changed everything for me, because I thought, well, if everybody's so concerned with what I'm up to, I might as well talk to them about things that matter in the world. Because my job is cool, sure, but it's just a job. This is the stuff that is worth attention. Yeah. This is the stuff that's worth pushing myself into more of my extroverted tendencies than like my hermit crab tendencies. And this passion gives my life a purpose. I clock in and I clock out at not quite a desk job, but like a job. Yeah. This is why I like to be alive, is to do this stuff.
Yeah. And I feel like you've impacted so many people, especially young girls, because I know all of you are on Sophia's Twitter page. I'm on it every day, and I'm seeing amazing stuff. Look, we got some
Just going ham, screaming about all the things all the time.
So how has social media, you said when social media first came out, you were a little skeptical, but now looking at it and using it for good, how has it changed for you? How do you view social media now?
I mean, look, it's a mixed bag. It's a thing that I absolutely believe is an important tool. I think we all have deep-rooted rights to our voice and our expression. And not only are women under attack, but so is the First Amendment and the free press. So we need to really, again, step up, show up, speak up. But it's a strange thing to be a woman with a voice and to be a woman in the public eye, because everybody wants to tell you what you are not enough of, that you are too thin, that you are too fat, that you are too young, that you are too old, that you are too smart, that you're not smart enough, that you aren't tall enough, that like you're not petite enough. There's always something. Like as a woman, and it doesn't stop when you're a woman on a TV show or a woman who people think has it all figured out, there will be people who try to tear you down for every aspect of who you are. And unlike the much lesser, because I pay attention again to all of the data, unlike the much lesser amounts of criticism that my male coworkers receive, their criticism is not gender-based, their criticism is not sexually based, their criticism does not include threats of sexual violence, their criticism does not include death threats. That happens to me every day. So social media is not that fun, but those are the kinds of people I'm like, oh, you wanna throw a rape threat my way? Cool. Watch me post 10 more articles about why what's happening in the world right now is unacceptable. Like, you don't get to silence us. And it's interesting when we look at sort of those macro topics of the ways that women's bodies are weaponized in society. We can't ignore this stuff. So that's why an attack on birth control access is absolutely a war on women. That's why rape being used as a weapon of war all around the world, this is not some ideological phrase people like to use to rile up one side. This is happening. This is happening in the world. And for us, that's why exercising your free speech, making sure you're as educated as you can possibly be, making sure that you are standing up for your neighbor, defending your neighbor, whether that's a person who looks like you, a person of color, a person in a hijab who doesn't deserve to be talked shit to on the subway. Like, let's not do this. Let's stand up for each other and make sure that everybody knows that if we don't feel safe in the world, in any sort of marginalized universe in this big society, that nobody is safe. It's like the adage that freedom doesn't exist unless everyone is free. Those things are real. Yeah. And so when people say like, why are you so riled up? Like the bill, the bill's not gonna pass anyway, or why do you care so much? I mean, what's the difference if like your birth control's free or $20 a month? It's a big difference. And it's a big difference for a lot of women. And that's not an issue that men in the world are facing. So if it's up to us and up to our male allies in the room to show up and say, you know what, we really care about this too. It's weird that insurance covers Viagra and doesn't want to cover birth control. That's not okay. Yeah. That's a problem. So I think that's why being fired up about the things that seem to not be that big of a deal is a really big deal, because they're part of a larger system in place that it's up to us to be aware of, to educate ourselves on, to shed light on, and to have open conversations.
You've been vocal on social media about everything that's going on in our country since the election of the person I shall not be named. This is like Harry Potter. With the health care bill going through Senate next week and the threat of Planned Parenthood being no more, how do you kind of speak out and use your voice to kind of not influence but inspire others to do the same?
I think, look, it feels insurmountable all the time. I mean, there are days when I am reading the news and I literally have to put my phone down and I sob. Like, I just sit down on the floor and I sob, because I know that people will die. A lot of people. That's unacceptable. In the nation that we live in, that is unacceptable. It is unacceptable that we are the only first world country on earth that doesn't have paid maternity leave. These things are unacceptable. But after I just sob it out, I remind myself that it's all steps. Like, a marathon runner puts one foot in front of the other and runs 26 miles. I can't run 1 mile. So there's clearly, there's a ways to go, but it's doable because they start running in the same way that I do. They just have a better plan of attack. And I think about it like that. This is a marathon. Activism in the age of foreign interplay and just a general hot mess disaster is a marathon. And I call my representatives every morning. I spend 3 minutes on the phone. I say the same thing every day. I'm like, oh, hi, did you think it wasn't gonna happen today? Because I'm still here. You work for me. My taxes pay your salary. So this thing that you're doing, not okay. And we have to remind ourselves that that's the reality. These people work for us. They have to hear from us. We have to make the phones ring off the hook. Send faxes. You can still do that. There's websites that do that, and it's really fun. Just never stop. Inundate these people. We have more power than they want us to think that we do. And, talk about paper bag bottom shelf, like these closed door meetings on what's gonna happen with the future of our lives. Like they're not giving themselves this healthcare, they're keeping the ACA for themselves. Anyway, it's the kind of stuff that we have to be riled up about, and we have to be diligent, and it feels insurmountable, and it feels really scary, but it's actually really not that hard. 3 minutes a day, make some phone calls, write some letters, get together with your neighbors and in your communities and go to town halls and show up and speak up like nothing. I cry tears of inspired joy and have hope for the future when I see those town halls on the news and I see the line of everybody in the neighborhood stretching out and down the block and around the corner. I'm like, we're showing up, And we're starting, I think, to realize that a lot of the stuff that's been sensationalized across networks for ratings, everybody's just selling soap. And I know that because that's what I do. Sure, is my show cool? Yeah, I love it. But it's only on the air because the advertising makes enough money for the network. That's it. So the news is the same. The commercials pay for things, and people like to watch things that are sensationalized. And so our news media, by and large, is like a tabloid these days. So it's up to us to read good news. It's up to us to share good news. It's up to us to be the millions of new subscribers that the New York Times is receiving. Those things give me hope. When I see people saying, we're gonna push toward truth, we're gonna push toward honor, we're gonna push toward reality, we're not looking for clickbait headline, let's turn away from those things. Let's vote with our time. Let's vote with our retweets. Let's vote with where we spend our money. Every single thing that we do is watched, recorded, made into a statistic, becomes, part of an infographic that some brand is looking at to try to figure out how to sell their soap. So let's support the things that matter. Let's support the things that will actually shift the pendulum. We hold all of the power, and especially women. When you look at who holds purchase power in America, it's women. It's us. So it's up to us, and we have to be, I think, first better to ourselves. We have to be not embarrassed to talk about our own bodies. The fact that so many women are embarrassed to ask their doctors about their bodies, or embarrassed to go to the Duane Reade and buy tampons. We have to stop. Yeah. This is so crazy. Something made us feel that way. We didn't grow up feeling that way. We weren't like little girls who were like, our bodies are weird. We were playing with our friends and going to recess and climbing trees. We got to take it back a little bit. And I think it runs the gamut from everything from how we make informed decisions about our own bodies to how we show up and do what's right for our community and for our country.
And no one should have power over our bodies except for us.
No.
I should be able to make a choice for myself and not be told what I have to do.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate when people like you use their voice when they know that they have so many people who they can reach. So when you wake up in the morning, you were talking about different news sites and different headlines. Where do you go to ingest your news, and what kind of sites these days have inspired you with their coverage?
Check my Twitter feed. I retweet them all day long. I just want exposure for all the good things. That's one of the things that I actually appreciate the most is I curate lists on my Twitter app. So I get up in the morning and I go through my news list. And it is the thing that sometimes I'm like, this is probably not how I should start my day. I should give myself 1 hour before I'm so mad. But also I want to know. I want to support real journalism, investigative journalism. So, I was a journalism major. This stuff is deeply important to me from a personal perspective and a moral perspective, and also an impact perspective when we look at community, country, et cetera, the globe. I think that that's a great way to do it. I also force myself to look through the feeds of news outlets I don't agree with, because it's important to know where people are coming from. It's the reason that I can sit down, and I choose to sit down with people who don't feel the way about the things I believe in my bones that I do. Yeah. And I ask questions. And there's nothing more impactful than just trying to learn why somebody feels the way that they feel and being kind about it and figuring out where you share common ground. Everybody shares common ground about their families. Everybody, no matter how they voted, loves their kids. And when you can make human headway, and it's not, well, I'm right and you're wrong and you're this and no, have more conversations. It's important to be informed and read the news and actually make sure you're sourcing real news, actual facts. There are no alternative facts. There are only facts. That's all there is. Yep. Science is real. There are only facts. RIP, a huge part of our ice shelf. I really think it's up to us to sort of press toward it. And I know it's tough because there's so much noise. Everywhere we look, there's a screen, an article, a billboard, a something. There's tweets streaming faster than we can manage them. So that's why I make lists. I hone everything down. I don't see as much overwhelming information as I used to. I've figured out a way to navigate it. And the onus for that was on me. I had to do it, and we're all capable of it. It's not that hard. It took me longer probably than it should have. I mean, what else is new? It's like, aren't we all procrastinators? But it's not actually that hard. Calling your representatives every day is not that hard. It's really fun. It's really fun when someone picks up the phone. I love it. I'm like, oh, I got you today. I'm not gonna leave another voicemail. Are you getting sick of hearing from me yet? I'm not going away. I just think that it's up to us to shape it a little bit. There's more stuff out there, so we have to apply our own filters, and we have to make sure that we're doing it thoughtfully, and we have to make sure we're coming from the right place. I get a lot of people who don't believe in certain things that I just know are right, who say, well, what makes your opinion more valid than my opinion? And I'm like, it's not that my opinion is more valid than your opinion at all. You have every right to your opinion. But I will not respect an opinion that denies my right to exist as freely as you do. I will not respect an opinion that denies the rights of other human beings to exist as freely as you do. And you shouldn't feel good about that. If you really want to argue a point that is reducing another person's humanity, maybe the reason you're so mad arguing it is because actually deep down you're really embarrassed by the thing that you're arguing. Like, let's put this stuff down. We have to come from a place where we're being good to people. So, it's like I don't want to fight with people, but I always want to ask, like, where is this coming from for you? Is it coming from a place that is rooted in kindness, fairness, legal equality, to be, data-driven and emotionally driven love? Because if your argument is rooted in denial of equality and fear, like, I don't got time for you. Sorry.
You got to get back into journalism, girl, right? We got to read some stories. I feel like you, Connie Britton, and like Kerry Washington can take over the world.
Literally, Connie, I fully agree with you. Connie and I were on a trip for my birthday, and we were literally like, our other friends who were with us were making fun of us because we were like in this beautiful place in Mexico. I never go on vacation. I haven't been on a vacation in so long. I'm always like running in for something and speaking somewhere and running back out. And people are like, you travel all the time. And I'm like, it's not quite like that though. Because like even when I travel, I go to like a documentary film festival. Like it's beautiful, but it's still ingesting journalism and trying to work. So I went on an actual vacation. I went to Mexico and we were sitting by the pool. And, you're like supposed to be drinking margaritas and like killing yourself with guacamole. And we were like, okay, so if we start thinking about what a coalition looks like, we should call Elizabeth Warren. Christian Gillibrand's gonna be really excited. We should figure, and we're like brainstorming lists. And I have my notebook out, and one of my girlfriends came over and just took it and was like, "It's your birthday? Stop. Stop it." And she went and she put my notebook in her room and locked it in there. And I was like, "Fine, I'll wait till Monday. And then we'll get back to this."
Well, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
And we're happy that you're
So
doing
we're working
it. for
on it. We're
Good.
working on it.
Well, I do want to open it up for some questions from the audience. So here we go.
I'm first. Hi, Sophia. I'm Jessica, and this is my second time meeting you. And every time I see you in person and every time I read what you write and your passion, your heart, it just warms my heart. And I think you're an inspiration. I was just wondering, where did your passion start? Because you can have a passion built up, but then now you're able to spread it everywhere. And what is the passion the closest to your heart? I guess that's two questions.
Yeah, I don't know where it started because this is just me. I've always been this person. I've always been like in front of somebody, like yelling at the playground bully to leave them alone. And ever since I was a little kid, my mom jokes. She's like, "You were full Joan of Arc in your crib. Like, you have always been a psycho." And I'm like, sorry. I don't know how else to do it. And there's people who will say like, "Well, but for your business, isn't it better to be mysterious? And isn't it better to not like have opinions so you can play?" And I'm like, get out of my face. What? No. Somebody doesn't want to hire me because I give a shit about the world. Like, cool, bro, I'll work for somebody else. I don't know how else to do it. And for me, I don't look at it as one thing. I think about issues systemically. And you wouldn't go to the doctor with chest pain and have them be like, "Well, I'm going to examine your bicep and only your bicep." You'd be like, "Cool. But maybe like do a scan and run a blood test and make sure like, I don't know, my heart is okay." You know what I mean? I think about the way that systems create problems for people, like a whole human body. We have to look at all the ways that they fit together because all of this stuff is interconnected. And yes, it's complicated, it's like it's threaded in through so many things. But I think that we start figuring out for each of us what makes us passionate, what wakes us up in the morning, what makes us so angry. And you have to go toward those things. You have to let the thing that ignites a fire inside of you be your compass. And I think that obviously I look at the position of women in the world. Like, it's clear that women's rights matter to me like breathing. And I look at all of the ways in which those things are affected. I look at the way the environment creates crises for women. I look at the way that lack of education access creates crises for women. I look at the way that lack of gender parity and lack of enough female CEOs in the tech space and all of it. It's like, minor to macro. I think we have to identify the theme. That's a big umbrella theme for me. And then we figure out all of the points that we can plug into and serve. And I know, especially for me, like, there's no way that every single one of you in this audience has the exact same profile of concern. Everybody has things that matter to them more. So when I get to be like the thing, if my Twitter feed serves as like the highlighter on the notepad of all of these things are kind of broken, and here's all of these really inspiring ways that you can make a difference, like, great. If you're into education access, as you know I am, if you're into reproductive rights, if you're into the environment, and if I can help you figure out how to lean into that, that is literally the purpose of my life. Like, when I'm 90 years old and hopefully like surrounded by all of my family and 47 dogs, and I'm on my deathbed, like, it's not gonna be how many episodes of television I made that matter. This is what matters. Impact is what matters. Relationships and connections with human beings. Like, we've been sold a bill of goods that the stuff and the achievements and like the career, it doesn't matter, you guys. It's why, like, you see so many of like the most famous people in the world completely fall apart. And like, you hear all these guys that run companies that are worth billions of dollars be like, money doesn't buy happiness. And I'm like, easy for you to say, you're a billionaire. Yeah. And then you talk to them or you listen to them speak and you're like, oh wow, they struggle too. Like, they're super depressed and they don't know how to date because Tinder's a disaster. And like, everybody's going through the same shit. You know, so we have to start looking at the larger thematic realities of how we find purpose, of how we create meaning. And it isn't gonna be found in the job or the car or the paycheck. It's obviously in something bigger. It's obviously in relationship. And so how do we do that? And that's what I think days like this are exciting for. That's why I think showing up for a campaign like this matters. Like, you guys, I just turned 35. And people, when they heard I was doing this, were like, you're gonna go talk about birth control? Like, can you do that? And I was like, hey guys, I think the jig is up. Pretty sure at 35, like, nobody, come on. Like, nobody thinks anybody in the room is a virgin anymore. Let's move on. God, let's just not be embarrassed about
Sophia,
our
you're a
body.
virgin?
Isn't that so crazy? I just thought, I don't know. It's like, let's get real with each other. We have permission. Let's move past the distractible stuff and let's like get into the meat of it. If you're a vegan, let's like get into the
veggies. Get into
If
the
you're a
veggies.
vegan, let's like get into the quinoa, you know what I mean?
Well, I think, are we out of time? We have time for, 2 more, yes. All right, who's up next?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for empowering women like myself. I think it's very important, the work that you
Hey
do.
girl, hey.
It does, and it makes me feel just in my strong opinion, so I definitely appreciate that. But I wanted to know what initially inspired you to use your platform the way that you do, because a lot of celebrities shy away from very tough topics, or they won't use social media altogether. Right. But you definitely use it to get information out there, and I just want to know if there was something that set that off.
I don't know how not to do it. I like, what am I, because this is how I talk all day. So if I have a platform, like, and I'm not talking about any of this, what do I have to talk about? Be like, wow, it's so hot today. I don't, like,
People
I don't,
used to tweet like that,
but
by
like,
the way.
I don't need that on the internet. I'm like, I don't have time for your commentary on the weather. If there's like a funny joke about it, or you're like complaining about the fact that you're wearing a pencil skirt and your thighs are chafing, hello, like, I get it, but there has to be, we all have to feel like we're being authentic to ourselves. And I think for me, I don't like the way that women are very often treated on the internet. And I didn't like the way, as a young woman on a television show, I felt like I was treated like a chess pawn. Like, people talk about you and your body and your life and their insane theories about like who you might be dating. There have been a couple people I've been rumored to have been dating that I'm like, I wish. That would be so fun. How do I talk to that guy? Like, but it's also like there's humor there because it sucks. And it sucks to be reduced, and it sucks to be talked about like an object, and it sucks to be treated like a piece of meat. Like, it sucks. And eventually, I realized that I had to kind of lean into the suck, because clearly social media wasn't gonna go away. And clearly people loving to say inappropriate things to women, that's not going anywhere. So I had to do something else about it. And I remember when the BP oil spill happened, when Deepwater Horizon went down, and I was so enraged to know, again, looking at data, what the schematics of the engineers' recommendations were for how that well was to be built, and that they just weren't followed, and that it wasn't properly enforced, and that there was only one blind shear ram when at minimum, legally, you're required to have 2. And I was like inhaling all of this information about how a company worth billions and billions of dollars let a bunch of people making a little bit above minimum wage die in the ocean and poisoned the ocean because it was profitable. And that, I was like, I'm done, it's over. Like, I just lost it. And I was like, cool, Twitter, what's up? I'm here. I'm going to New Orleans next week. I'm here. And I went to the Louisiana coastline, and I took 2 environmental lawyers, and I was threatened with arrest, and I was told I wasn't allowed to be filming on the beach. And that's not true. But I was being threatened by law enforcement, being told that if I continued filming, I'd be arrested, until they realized that the people who I was with were attorneys who knew that what they were telling us was bullshit. And I thought, it is up to us. It is up to us as citizens to share information, because corporations aren't going to do it for us. Like restrictions, when he who shall not be named talks about how like there's too many regulations and we've got to lessen them. Regulations literally keep people alive. Like, cool, you can't use chemicals in baby food that cause brain deformity. What a weird regulation. Like, no, that matters. And that, like, I can't even talk about it without being like, ah! That was it. That was it for me. Just realizing that if like weirdos who, by the way, don't know how to use spell check were gonna impersonate me on Twitter and Facebook, I was like, nah, babe, I'm gonna use my journalism degree to my advantage. You know, the reason that I want to be that I am an actor, that I wanted to be an actor, was to tell stories about people that would make people feel things, think things, provide catharsis, and maybe open people's eyes to people who are different than them. All of that boils down to telling real stories about real people. Even if they're fictional and they're written by some great writer, they all happen because there's a real story behind it. And I realized social media was my place to tell real, actual news stories and stories about people and expose an audience to a group of school kids in Guatemala who deserve a school. To expose audiences to nonprofits they might not have ever heard of. To tell women like, yo, you deserve to have sovereignty over your body. Don't be embarrassed about it. You know, that stuff, to harken back to my earlier point, that's what gives my life a purpose. My job is not my purpose, it's my job. I hope to do lots of them. I hope to do lots of shows and lots of films and eventually write them and create them and produce them and go back to directing and like all of those things. But that is work. That's not the same as fulfillment. And I think for me and everybody, like, I want every woman and man in this room to figure out where your fulfillment lies. And they won't be the same. Who cares? They don't have to be. Somebody's the head, somebody's the hands, somebody's the feet, somebody's the, like, that, for the body that is our universe, like, all of us have to serve different purposes. But for me, my purpose, the thing that makes me feel alive, is to live in service. And I'm learning that that means service to my community and service to myself. Self-love is not selfish. Caring about your body is not selfish. Defending other women's rights to care about their bodies is important. You know, this stuff is important. And so that's why I say to so many people that finding the thing that like sets you on fire, that will lead you to your purpose too. Because you wouldn't have such passion about something if it didn't matter to you. And the stuff that matters to you matters more than like the 10 or 20 or who knows, maybe you're lucky and the 2 jobs you're gonna have like from now until the day you die. There's bigger stuff at play that we need to look at and fight for.
Well, never change, girl, right? Never change.
Not gonna.
Thank you so much for being here. This has been an awesome, inspiring afternoon, so we appreciate it. Thanks, Sophia.
Thanks for
Thank you,
coming,
guys.
y'all.